Hello dear friends, it's great to see you again in this video. Wishing you a new day filled with joy and peace. A new day for Hoai Ca begins in the familiar tranquility of the countryside, where everything seems to move at a slow and simple rhythm. Yet beneath those seemingly ordinary moments are subtle shifts, like gentle waves quietly rising, signaling changes gradually approaching in her life. Nothing is loud or sudden, everything unfolds softly, but just enough to make one pause and reflect. In the morning, Hoai Ca steps into her familiar garden, a place that has been with her through countless days. The soft sunlight filters through the leaves, casting a fresh green glow over the vegetable beds. But as she gets closer, a quiet sadness touches her when she notices signs that the growing season is slowly coming to an end. The vegetables are still green, but no longer as vibrant as before, and pests have begun to appear more frequently. She kneels down, gently turning over each leaf to inspect carefully. Tiny bite marks, small worms hiding beneath the leaves, all of it feels like a reminder that nature follows its own rules. Even though she had recently used biological treatments and saw some improvement, the pests have returned, even more than before. A hint of concern flickers in her eyes, but it is soon replaced by patience and calm determination. She exhales softly, not out of frustration, but as a way to remind herself to keep going. For Hoai Ca, this garden is not just a place to grow vegetables to sell. It holds her effort, time, and personal emotions. Every row of plants, every leaf carries her care. And because of that, no matter the challenges, she chooses to continue nurturing it as an inseparable part of her life. In one corner of the garden, the atmosphere becomes livelier with familiar sounds. Mick, the playful little dog, is running around, exploring everything. Hoai Ca watches and smiles gently, calling out softly to remind him to stay close to home and not wander too far. Her voice is not harsh, but filled with care and warmth, just like the way she treats everything close to her. It is these small moments that shape a simple yet warm life. Nothing grand is needed, just the presence of familiar things each day is enough to bring peace to the heart. As time passes, the sunlight grows stronger, signaling the busiest hours of the day. Later in the afternoon, after finishing her work at the market, Hoai Ca returns home with a simple joy. She sold out all her goods. It is not an overwhelming happiness, but a quiet sense of relief, like setting down a burden after a long day. At the same time, Hùng has just returned from picking Tony up from school. Without needing many words, they understand each other and begin working in the garden. One tills the soil, the other clears weeds. Their movements are so familiar that no reminders are needed. That coordination comes not only from habit, but from a bond built over time. While working, they start discussing the next planting season. What vegetables would suit the summer weather? Water spinach, amaranth, or Malabar spinach. Each has its own advantages, and they talk it through naturally. These seemingly small conversations become the threads that connect them, making everything feel closer and more meaningful. There are no grand words or big plans, just simple discussions about what lies ahead. Yet, it is precisely this simplicity that brings a sense of stability and reassurance. When the garden work comes to a pause, the surroundings grow quieter. In that stillness, Hoai Ca and Hùng exchange a glance and make a natural decision to visit the elderly man who lives nearby. He is someone familiar to both of them, known not only for his valuable herbal remedies, but also for his warmth and trustworthiness. They do not need much preparation, nor do they need to inform him beforehand. For them, sincerity matters most. And it is that sincerity that makes such visits special, like a gentle continuation of everything that has happened throughout the day, while also opening the door to new moments waiting ahead. When they arrived, The first thing that caught Hoai Ca and Hung's eyes was the elderly man's bent figure in the small garden. His aged hands, though worn by time, still moved quickly and skillfully as he carefully picked each medicinal herb. The late afternoon sunlight gently rested on his shoulders, highlighting the deep wrinkles etched by the years, yet every movement reflected a level of precision and experience that not everyone could possess. Without needing to call out or exchange formal greetings, Hoai Ca and Hung seemed to understand each other instantly. They stepped forward, rolled up their sleeves, and joined him in his work. The atmosphere there was not noisy, yet it was full of life. The rustling of leaves, the soft snipping of scissors, and the elderly man's occasional explanations blended together, creating a feeling very different from the daily routines Hoai Ca was used to. Each plant he harvested came with a careful introduction, from its shape and scent to its uses. Some helped relieve joint pain, others supported the treatment of herniated discs, and some were used to detoxify the body. Every story about each herb was not just knowledge, but a reflection of a lifetime of accumulated experience. Hoai Ca listened attentively. At first, she simply intended to help, but the more she listened, the more she found herself drawn into the world of traditional medicinal herbs, a world that seemed familiar yet held countless details she had never truly noticed before. The small leaves, the simple plants growing quietly in the garden, through the elderly man's words, suddenly became more valuable than ever. They were no longer just ordinary plants, but remedies that could help people overcome illness, ease pain, and bring hope. As her hands continued working, her mind began to fill with thoughts she had never considered so clearly before. What she was seeing and hearing was not just knowledge, it felt like a door slowly opening before her, revealing a new path, a different direction she could choose. At first, that thought was just a faint spark. But gradually, it grew clearer, stronger, more defined. Hoai Ca suddenly realized that if she only knew about these things, they would eventually pass by like everything else. But if she truly learned, truly understood, and could practice them, she could turn this knowledge into a part of her life. Not only to help herself, but also to help others, people like those the elderly man had been caring for day after day. That realization stirred something deep within her, a mix of excitement, anticipation, and a touch of uncertainty. But above all, it was a clear and undeniable urge. Finally, after a moment of hesitation, Hoai Ca gathered her courage and expressed her wish. Her voice was soft, but sincere and determined. She did not say much, only that she wanted to learn, to be taught, to truly understand what she was witnessing. At that moment, she did not know what kind of response she would receive. But what surprised her was how gently the answer came. The elderly man looked at her with kind eyes, without surprise or hesitation, and slowly nodded. Beside him, the old woman smiled softly, her gaze giving Hoai Ca an extra sense of encouragement. Despite his age, the elderly man was willing to pass on everything he knew. Not through complicated words, but through simple, everyday actions. He showed her how to recognize each plant by its scent, some faint and gentle, others slightly stronger. He taught her how to distinguish leaves by their shape and color, even by touch. Then came the preparation, how to chop, how to grind while preserving the medicinal properties, and how to use them correctly for the best effect. Every step was taught patiently, without haste, as if you were passing on a lifetime's worth of knowledge. And along the way, he reminded her of simple yet meaningful truths. A blade stays sharp when it is honed. A person becomes wise through learning. The words were spoken gently, but they stayed with Hoai Ca for a long time. It was not just advice about learning a skill, but a lesson about life, perseverance, and dedication. From that moment on, Hoai Ca began her learning journey with full seriousness and focus. She missed no detail, whether in the elderly man's words or actions. She listened, observed, and practiced. Sometimes, she even tasted the leaves to remember their flavors more clearly, to distinguish them better. Each experience brought her closer to understanding, step by step, toward what she truly desired. For Hoai Ca, this was no longer something unfamiliar or just a passing curiosity. It had become a real opportunity. An opportunity to change herself, to open a new path for her future. And from those very first steps, she knew she was gradually entering a new chapter, one that naturally continued from everything that had come before and quietly prepared her for what was yet to come. But then, in that peaceful space where only the rustling of leaves and gentle guidance seemed to exist, something unexpected happened, something that made everything pause in a very special moment. While Hoai Ca was carefully following each instruction, her hands skillfully chopping the freshly picked herbs, her sleeve unintentionally slid up slightly. That small, natural movement caught the attention of the elderly couple. The old man's gaze suddenly paused, no longer focused on his work. The old woman tilted her head slightly, looking closer as if trying to confirm something they themselves were not yet ready to believe. On Hoai Ca's arm, a small scar was revealed. It was not large, nor particularly unusual at first glance. But to them, it carried an entirely different meaning. The shape, the position, everything was strikingly similar to the scar of the grandchild they had lost contact with long ago, a memory they had never forgotten, no matter how many years had passed. The atmosphere suddenly fell silent. There were no more steady conversations, no more explanations about the herbs. Everything sank into a deep stillness, where each person was lost in their own thoughts. The old man's eyes grew heavier with emotion, while the old woman gently raised her hand to her mouth, as if trying to hold back the feelings rising within her. That coincidence was too significant to ignore. At first, Hoai Ca did not understand what was happening. But when she noticed the unusual looks from the elderly couple, she gradually became aware. She glanced down at her arm, the scar that had been with her for so long, something she had never thought could carry any special meaning. Questions began to surface. For the elderly couple, it was confusion mixed with hope. Was this merely a coincidence, or a sign that life was quietly revealing something long hidden? For Hoai Ca, it was a feeling difficult to describe, part surprise, part anticipation, as if something important was slowly drawing closer to her. She fell silent for a moment. Since childhood, Hoai Ca had never had clear answers about her own family. Her past had always been vague, like scattered pieces of a puzzle that had never been completed. And so, faced with this strange coincidence, a small spark of hope began to grow within her, faint, but enough to make her heart tremble. For the first time, she felt that she might be getting closer to something she had been missing all along. She did not rush, nor did she jump to conclusions. But deep inside, she wanted to know more, to understand more. She wanted to meet the person the elderly couple spoke of, their child, so she could face the truth and perhaps find answers for her own life. Not out of fleeting curiosity, but from a longing that had quietly existed for a long time. When Hoai Ca gently expressed her wish, her voice was soft, yet filled with sincerity and a slight tremble. She did not know whether her thoughts were right, but she knew that if she did not try to find out, she would always carry unanswered questions. The elderly couple exchanged a glance. Their eyes clearly reflected deep emotion. Old memories seemed to resurface, bringing with them feelings they had tried to bury for so long. They did not rush to confirm anything, but they could not deny the significance of this coincidence. Finally, they nodded. They promised that when their child returned, they would contact Hoai Ca immediately. They wanted to give her the chance to meet, to verify, to discover the truth as clearly as possible. No one said it aloud, but everyone understood this was not just an ordinary meeting, but something that could become a turning point. In that moment, it felt as if a new door had just opened. For Hoai Ca, her journey was no longer just about learning herbal medicine or pursuing a new path to improve her life. It had begun to expand into something greater, a journey to find her roots, to piece together the missing parts of her identity. The feeling was not loud, but it was deep and unmistakable. That day, Hoai Ca did not leave as early as usual. She stayed longer, continuing to help, continuing to learn, continuing to listen to stories about herbs and life. But this time, her heart held more than just focus. It carried a quiet hope that was steadily growing. Every task she did, every lesson she learned, now seemed to hold a new meaning. Because sometimes in life, the simplest things, a small scar, a fleeting glance, an unexpected coincidence, can become the beginning of something much greater. And it is from moments like these that new journeys quietly begin, naturally continuing from the past and guiding us forward toward answers that may already be waiting. Today's story comes to an end here, but Hoai Ca's journey seems to have only just begun. A scar, a coincidence, or a thread of fate that was destined all along. Will Hoai Ca truly find the answers about her identity? And when the truth is revealed, how will everything change? All will continue in the next episode. If you find this story meaningful and want to follow what happens next, don't forget to like the video to support me and leave a comment to share your thoughts and feelings. Thank you so much for watching and see you again in the next episode.
Xin chào mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Hôm nay thì mình vừa mới làm xong một video tiếp theo về câu chuyện của Hoài Ca và Hùng. Thì hôm nay như mọi người cũng đã thấy là nếu như mọi người đã xem video của Hoài Ca và Hùng thì hôm nay mình đã kiểu kể lại câu chuyện đó bằng tiếng Anh cho mọi người. Tại vì nếu như mà theo dõi bộ phim hay là cái tập video đó bằng tiếng Việt thì có thể mọi người sẽ hơi mệt mỏi một chút, vì phải xem bản phụ đề và phải xem khá là lâu, thì mình đã làm video này để tóm tắt lại nội dung. Thì mong rằng mọi người sẽ theo dõi và ủng hộ cho kênh của mình nhiều hơn. Cảm ơn mọi người rất là nhiều nhé. Bây giờ thì mình sẽ chỉ có hoàn thành video nữa và đăng tải thôi. Tạm biệt mọi người, hẹn gặp lại mọi người trong những video tiếp theo nha.